Hello and welcome to Module 8 in our Angular series. Today we're going to be implementing the payment gateway. What we need to do first is come to your browser and just type in PayPal Developer. Click on the link, right, and then you'll be directed to the site. Okay, you scroll down. We need to come to Get Started where we'll create a developer account. So just click on Get Started. Right, and the documentation tells you exactly what needs to be done. Right, so 4 steps: create a PayPal account, create a REST API. What's a REST API? This stands for Representational State Transfer. Okay, and that's a kind of software architecture that serves as a guide to building web applications. Okay, so once we create that app, we will get credentials which will include a client ID, and we'll use that client ID in our code. We need to create Sandbox accounts for testing, and these will be one personal account and one business account. So the personal account will allow us to test the buyer side of the transaction, and the business account will allow us to check for the seller side of the transaction, meaning that we can check if the money has gone out of the buyer's account and gone into the seller's account. Before we begin, we need to create a PayPal account. Right, we're going to create a developer account. All we need to do for that is follow these steps. Log into dashboard, select sign up, right, and then create account. The screen looks exactly like this. Okay, so let's now go ahead and create our developer account. Just click on log into dashboard. Click on sign up. Don't change the country of residence. Put in a valid email ID and a password, and then click create. Okay. Once the account is created, you can then go ahead and sign into the account. Put in the password. And you come to your apps and credentials. But of course, we need to create accounts first. So come to the Sandbox Accounts. And we need to create, as I said, a personal and business account. Right, so select create account. Leave it as personal. Don't change the country or region, and don't select create. Select create custom account. Okay, put in the details. Again, don't change the region. Keep personal as is. Put in an email address. This need not be a valid email address, but it should be something that you remember, so note it down. And of course, the password too needs to be remembered, because this is the account we log in or we log into when we're testing the buyer side of the transaction. Okay. Put in a first name and last name, although it's optional, put it in. And then put in a balance. You could put in, for example, 10,000. This is mock money, so it doesn't matter how much you put in there. Select payment card. You can select PayPal and then click create account. Okay, there's no need of note, right? Once you click create account, when you look into your accounts under Sandbox, you should see the email ID you use with the words processing in red, or the word processing rather in red. So leave that as is, I've created a simple project. If you want to code along with me, you can do it, or you can just observe what's going on screen. If you do decide that you want to create this little project, you need to go to your Node.js command prompt. Type in your Windows search bar Node.js command prompt or node.js, right? And once you have the prompt, you can just type in ng new PayPal project or whatever you want to call it. And then of course go through the process of creating the project. We're using CSS for styling and we don't need routing. Okay. Right. So coming to the project itself, I'm going to start in the TypeScript file. And what we need to do first is import the onInit lifecycle hook, viewChild. Okay, we're going to be learning about the viewChild decorator today, element ref, and then we declare a var PayPal. Okay, now why do we need this variable? We're going to put into our index.html file a script, okay, which is like this, and this comes from the PayPal documentation, right? So we'll copy the script and we paste it here. Now this script is responsible for generating the PayPal button, okay, and it needs a variable which exists on what is called the window object, and therefore we need to describe that, therefore we need to declare that variable. Now what is the window object? The window object is the tab in which the code will run. Okay. Next thing we need to do is to put in the implements on init, right, within this export class statement. So this is now going to allow us to have the ng on init method implemented, right? Then we have a property. So here we are hard coding the description, right? In a real world, you would have the description coming in from somewhere. And we have the price hard coded as well. In our main project, we'll use the price from total cost, right? And then we have a Boolean type, which again we will use in our PayPal integration as well as in the view file. Now we are using the viewChild decorator, and the viewChild decorator allows us to query the document object model. So what will happen is viewChild will query the document object model looking for an element with this selector. Okay, and this selector could be a component. In our case, it is what is called a string token. Okay, so it will look for the string token, or it will look for an element with the string token, right? And then of course present the results to us. Now here we specify the property static as true. By default, the static property of viewChild is false, and that is recommended by Angular because the results of these queries, okay, are recommended to be retrieved in the ng after view init method. Now the ng after view or the after view init lifecycle hook executes after the view is fully initialized, right? And the reason Angular recommends that the query results be retrieved there is because Angular can guarantee that the results would be retrieved or would be available rather once the view is initialized. But In some cases where we are creating a view on the fly, or what is called a dynamic view, which we're doing in this case, right, and for which we will be querying for a template reference variable, we cannot retrieve the results in the after view init or in the ng after view init method. Why? Because what we are doing then is we are asking that another view be created after the view has been initialized already. And then we're going to get an error, right? An error saying expression changed since checked or something like that. Right, now to avoid that error, Angular recommends we put in static true and define the view in the ng on init method. So that's what we're going to do. We have the PayPal element property, which is going to be of the element reference class type, and this will allow us to directly access the element in the document object model, okay, using a property called native element of this class. Okay, and we'll see how to use that later. Of course, Angular recommends to use native element carefully, because if you're doing some modification there, then we are making the code susceptible to cross-site scripting. So in this case, of course, PayPal is just going to place the button in that particular element. Okay, and therefore it's okay in this case to use the element reference with native element. Okay, so once we've done that, the next thing we'll do is we'll now put in the ng on init method, and within that we're just going to have a console.log statement first, right, to see the total cost. Make sure the total cost is coming through. Okay, because we can't have total cost 0. If total cost for some reason is 0, the PayPal integration will fail, because PayPal requires a value. That's mandatory. Okay. Of course, the value cannot be 0. Right? Then we implement the buttons method of the PayPal object. Before we go to what we're going to put within that method, we look at how the button is rendered. Right? So the button is rendered, okay, using PayPal element, like I said, of the element reference type and the property native element. So what will happen, to put it simply, is that ViewChar will query the DOM looking for an element that has this particular string token, right? And then using element ref and the native element property of element ref, PayPal will place the button into the element, right, that bears this particular string token. So now let me take you straight to the HTML file, and this is what that looks like. We just have a div with a template reference variable PayPal, and the name you put in here should be the same as the name you specify with ViewChar, because remember, ViewChar is going to query the DOM looking for this, so we can't have a different name there, right? And of course, as I said, PayPal will place the button within this div. Okay. Now the next thing we'll do, like I said, is to, within the buttons method, put in the create order method, and the create order method will call the actions.order.create method, to which we need to send purchase units, which will be an array, and within the array we will specify the description property, okay, and the amount. Now within the amount property, we can specify currency code. That's not compulsory. Currency code is optional, but value is compulsory. Right? Now the order is set up. Right? Once the order is approved, then the onApproved method will be executed. We've got to ensure that we put in a semicolon after the braces that complete the actions.order.create method definition, and then a comma after the create order method. Right now, within the onApproved method, we'll put in just a constant order, and then we log that on the console. And of course, we'll assign true to this dot payment done. Right? Okay, so I hope this is clear. Any questions? Feel free to post in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Right, now this completes the definition of our TypeScript file. Okay, within the view file, we'll have a div. If payment done is true, we just have a little message there. Okay, now coming to the script, where do we get that script from? If we go to docs, go to accept payments. Okay, and then select checkout. Right, and within checkout, select configure payments. Select single page application. And then scroll down and you see the script, right, which is the JavaScript SDK or software development kit. Click on this symbol that will copy the code, and then we come to our index.html file and we paste it within the opening and closing body tags. So just like that. Right? Control V. Now this, your client ID should be overwritten with a client ID that looks something like that. And to get that client ID, we need to go to our apps and credentials. Okay, so if I scroll down here, this is the one I had created earlier. So this is what the client ID looks like. Okay, and all you need to do is to just click on it, turns blue, Control C, right? And then of course you can paste it over your client ID, just like that. Okay, now how do we get that ID? We need to create the app. So here you will click create app. I need to specify an app name. So put in the app name. You can put in any name you like. And then the business account is required. That's why the business account needs to be created. And select create app. And once the app is created, you have your client ID. Right? Then just click on it. It will turn blue as you saw. Control C and then Control V to paste into your code. I'm going to delete this one as I have two of them. Right? And now of course we need to compile this code. Okay, so this has already been compiled. We can go and run this now. Okay, you can see that the button has taken up most of the width of the page because I haven't styled the div. Okay, but if we click on it, You need to sign in with your personal account that you created, the personal Sandbox account, that's mine. Okay, just put in the password. Login. You can see our amount there, right, for the transaction. Then click on Pay Now. And we get the message, transaction complete, thanks. Now let's look at the console and see whether our total cost came through. It did, as you saw on the application, but just to show you in terms of the console, uh, you can see their total cost. And this, of course, is the console.log order object, right? So if you scroll down, you can see there is an ID there. Status is completed, right? Expand value. You see the create time of the order, right? You can also see the payer name, email address, payer ID, etc. Right? Okay. So that's your order object. Okay. So basically, now you know how the PayPal integration works. Now to check whether the money has really, been taken from the personal account, and also to check that it has gone to the seller's account, what we can do is go back to PayPal developer site. Okay, and now if you scroll right down, click on Sandbox, and now you can see that our transaction has taken place, right? Now you want to check whether it's gone into the business account. Then what you need to do is log out of this one, log in to the business account. Right, and you can see within notifications, you can see the amount, right? So this is how the integration works. Now of course we need to put this integration into our main project, so let's do that now. So now load your main project and come straight to the checkout component TypeScript file. Okay, and we'll begin by declaring the variable PayPal. Okay, we know why this is needed now. Remember, this is going to exist on the window object, and the window is the tab in which our code executes. Okay. Then we will start by importing new child element ref. We also need the input directive and the output directive. Okay. why we need the input and output directive, I'll come to shortly. After this, we'll import the service, right? Track order quantity service. And of course, we need to inject it into the constructor, right? Then we need to put in the dependencies. So we need total cost, right? We also need something called total cost change. I'll explain to you why. Just put those in. Now we'll put in our input decorated properties as well as our output decorated properties. Okay, so we have two of these input, total cost and item added to cart, and we have output as total cost change, right? Now why do we need this output directive? If we don't have this output directive put in, PayPal will just register the amount coming through the store component, meaning what we are adding or what the user is adding to the cart from the store component. Remember, the user is also able to modify the cart, right? So therefore, we need to put in this output directive, and we'll make the necessary changes in the cart component as well later on. Okay, so once we've done this, put in some properties, public message, so that we are able to display a message to the user, right? And public dismiss, which is going to be a Boolean type. Okay. Then we need a public payment done, which we will use like we did in the previous project, right? So as you may have figured out, this is going to hold a message that will be displayed to the user. This will enable the user to dismiss that message, right? Through the clicking of the button that we'll put into the view. And then of course payment done would be used within the PayPal integration and also on the view. Okay, now we put in our view child decorator. Now you know why this is used, right? And after we're done with that, we'll start with the ng-on-init method. So put in a console.log statement again for the total cost, right? Then the PayPal.buttons method will execute. Okay. We'll then have the render, right? Remember, so that the button can be placed into the container, right? Which in our case is the div that will be referenced through this string token PayPal. Okay. Then put in the create order method, right? Arrow function. And then specify returns action.order.create, which requires purchase units. Okay, and we are going to have the array, of course, and within that we have description. Put in the braces properly, yeah? So there's an array and within that curly braces for the description. And then we specify the amount, again there's curly braces, and currency code along with value, which will be total cost, right? Okay, once this is done, make sure you put a semicolon at the end of the actions.order.create method and a comma after the create order. Okay. Then we need to put in the onApprove method, right? And within the onApprove method, we will of course have constant order equal to actions.order.capture, then console.log order. This dot payment done will be equal to true, right? So we assign the value true to the Boolean type. You can actually include whatever code you want to put here, right? So we're going to, after this call display message, which is a function we'll define, right? And we are going to use a set timeout here. Okay, and within that set timeout, we're going to use the window.location.href command or instruction to direct the user to the shipping component and the form. Okay, so I hope everything's clear so far. If you have any questions, feel free to post in the comments. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. We're going to have the set timeout execute after 5000 milliseconds, or rather have the command window.location.href execute after 5000 milliseconds or 5 seconds. You can reduce this if you like to 2 seconds. The reason for putting the set timeout is if you don't have it, you will see that the message will be displayed and the user does not have much time to read it and then click on it for it to disappear. Therefore, this time lag. Yeah. After that, we'll put in our display message function, and within that we just assign to the message property payment complete, thank you. And we'll also have a dismiss alert function where we just assign true to the boolean type this.dismiss. Okay, and that's all. This completes our class or TypeScript file for the checkout component. Right, now let's come to the view file. Okay, and in the view file we'll have the div for the the PayPal button container, right? And then we'll have an ng if. So if payment done and not dismissed. So dismiss should be false, right? Then we'll have a button which when clicked, dismiss alert will be executed. And you know why we're doing this now, so that the user can dismiss that message. Okay, and that's all for the view file. Right, now we need to put in some styling. So come to the checkout component CSS file, and the styling we need is of course for this button. So just put in that styling there. You can pause the video to copy these properties. Okay, once this is done, we now need to have the checkout component view render, right? And we're going to have it render from the store component. Therefore, we need the input directive, right? We need to put it in the input directive in our checkout component TypeScript file, right? So now come to your store component view file, and here we'll have an ng if item added to cart. So only if this is true, meaning the user has added an item to the cart, then we will have the view of the checkout component appear. Right? So we're using the selector here of the checkout component, and you can see we're using two-way binding with total cost, right? So that we can have the updated value both as per the store, which is the input basically binding that is specified here, as well as to the cart component specified through the output binding here, right? Banana in a box syntax, and then of course item added to cart with input binding. Now we need to style app checkout. So in the store CSS file, you just put in the properties for that styling. Okay. Okay, great. So now we've put in the PayPal integration. We know that after the payment is made, the user will be directed to the form. After the form, what should happen? So come to your shipping component HTML file, or rather let's go to the shipping component TypeScript file first. And we'll introduce two more properties, is visible and message. Is visible is of Boolean type equal to false, and then we have message, of course. Okay, and within the onSubmit method, we will assign true to is visible and we'll call display message. And within display message, we just say form submitted successfully. So that's the message will appear. That's the message that will appear when the user clicks on the submit button, right? And then put in the function dismiss alert. And here we are again directing the user to another component, which means we need to create this component, right? And you can create it from within VS Code. You don't need to go to the Node.js command prompt. All you need to do is click on terminal. Okay, click new terminal, right? And that should give you the PowerShell terminal at the bottom of your screen. Okay, and once you get the prompt, then you can just type in nggc and the name of the component, which is logout. Okay, that should create your component. Once the component is created, you should see it in the Explorer, right? Okay, so just type in nggc logout at this prompt. Okay, I'm not going to go through that. I'm sure you'll be able to do it. Right? Once the logout component is created, then just come to the HTML file, delete that default paragraph that comes with the component, and put in this div. The smiley that I've put here, you can get from the character map. I hope you remember how we did that. In case you don't, you need to just type in char, right? Click open, get access to the character map, and then once the character map is loaded, then just go to the Sego UI symbol character set, and if you scroll down, you should see the smiley. Okay, click on select and click on copy and then paste it here, Control V. Right. Now that we are done with that, remember we spoke about how we imported the output directive into the checkout component, which means we need to make some changes in our cart component. So come to the cart component TypeScript file. Okay, and here we'll just include output decorator with total cost change. Okay, you may get a squiggly under there. Don't worry about it. Leave it as is. Put in the dependency in the constructor, because now we'll have to include it in the service file as well. Right, so put this in. Then come to your track order quantity service file, and at the top just put in output total cost change new event emitter, and that's going to be of number type, right? And then within the update cart add and the update cart subtract, just after total cost is calculated, you will put in this dot total cost change dot emit the total cost, right? So we're using the emit method to send out the change in total cost. Similarly, in the update card subtract, right? Okay. Now, if you are not familiar with this character map, this is the Sego UI symbol. If you scroll down, okay, you see that smiley there. Select it, click select, click copy, right, and then paste it in your logout component view file. Okay. Right, so now that we're done with the track order quantity service file and the total cost with its two-way binding, the last thing we need to do is put in the script in the index.html. Right, so come to your PayPal site again. Right, we need to go back to our apps and credentials. We'll create the app. Hopefully your business account and your personal account is set up. Okay, so you should have both your business accounts and personal accounts set up, right? And once you have that, then come to my apps and credentials, right? And you can create a new app, put in the app name, and then of course specify your Sandbox business account. Then click create app. That should give you your client ID, right? Okay, if you click on the client ID, then like I said, it will turn blue and you can copy that, right? So for example, if I click on this one that I had created earlier, you can see the credentials. Just click on this, right? Then Control C. Then come back to your project to the index.html file. Okay, and you need the script as well. Okay, so what I suggest you do is you can just paste the client ID here and then cut it off from your Control X and paste it there once we have the script. Now to get the script, okay, let me do the same so that you don't have any confusion in your mind. So I'll just paste the code in there, right? So that's your client ID. Now for the script, we need to go to accept payments, right? And then select checkout. Within checkout, configure payments, right? Then come to single page applications, click on that, and then select this script. So copy, and then come to your index.html file and paste it, like I said, within the body tag. Okay, so I'm just going to paste it here, right? And now take this particular line of code, Control X, and select your client ID, Control V there to paste your client ID. Okay, you need to make sure, of course, that this is closed. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's on the next slide. Yeah, it's there. So that's all you need to make sure of. I'm going to delete this now because I already have it there once, right? Okay. So just to run through quickly what we did, we came to our checkout component TypeScript file. We have put in the variable that we require, right? But it will exist on the window object. We then put in the input and output properties as required. We set up the query with viewChild, and remember viewChild will query the DOM looking for the string token. Then of course within ng-on-init we put in the methods that are required for the PayPal integration to work. Right, and remember with the render method the button will be placed in the container as referenced by both the string token and native element. Right, of course we have display message and dismiss alert. So after we did that, we then of course put in the HTML in the view file. Right, this is pretty simple. After that, what did we do? The styling. Right, so once the styling was done, then we went to the store component HTML file and put in the selector for the checkout component. Right, and we then went to the shipping component TypeScript file, made some changes there, including adding a new component. Right, within that component, what did we do? We just put in a div, right? We just had a message, and there is a styling for that, of course, which I hope you have copied. If you've not, you can pause the video and copy those properties, right? And after that, what did we do? We went to our cart component, the cart component TypeScript file, and we put in total cost change with the output decorator, right? And of course injected it into the constructor, right? We then went to our service file, right? That's the track order quantity service file, and we put in the output decorated property again as new event emitter, and of course using emit method, right, we have then sent out the change in total cost, right? Don't forget also that in the store component we have the banana and the box syntax for total cost, right? We then put in the script into the index.html along with the client ID. Now of course remember we created a new component, the logout component. We need to add the path for that into the app routing module file. So come to the app routing module file, import logout component, and then put in a path, right? Just as I've done here. And now we are ready to run this to see if it works. We need to compile, of course. So come to your Node.js command prompt and type in ng-serve, right? Of course, you need to make sure that you're within your project directory. In another instance of the Node.js command prompt, we need to run the JSON server to collect the shipping details. So JSON server -watch, and the name of the file is ship2cust.json, right? Once that server is running and once the compilation is done, we can then go and execute the code. Okay, there's one more thing that in terms of the logout CSS, and just notice we put 400 there. Let's make it 300 so that it appears more or less in the center. So just change that. Okay, and check if your compilation is done and your server is running. Let's go ahead now and execute this. Okay, so now you don't see the checkout view yet. Add to cart, and now you see it. Let's add one more. Increase from the cart to make sure everything's running. We should be charged $80. So now we can click on the button. Okay, enter your personal account here along with the password. Log in. You may get a message saying you need to agree to cookies, as well as another message. Just click OK on that, and then you will be shown this screen. So we are charged $80 correctly, right? Click on Pay Now. Okay, we see our message. Click on that, it disappears. We should be now directed to our form. Put in the name, last name, phone number, email ID, street, city, state, okay, and then zip code, of course, and finally country. Click on submit form. We see the message form submitted. Click on it. It disappears. We get our message, thanks for shopping with us. See you again soon. Now this completes our project, right? So I hope you've enjoyed the series. There are a few loose ends that we need to tie up. We'll do that in the next session. So till then, take care, stay safe. Bye.